Welcome to the Business Growth Masterclass, where business growth is made simple. Listen as we discuss best practices to streamline your operations, increase your profits, and ultimately create healthier and more valuable companies. Today's guest was Dr. Jason Barker, who is a chiropractor by trade. He's the owner of Quantum Wellness and Quantum Health, as well as an owner of a commercial real estate investment business. He has a lot going on.
Yes, he does. He's a cool guy.
Great episode, great conversation.
Yeah.
What was the highlight of that for you? What was your number one takeaway?
Well, I mean, right off the bat, he starts out by explaining how the nerves work, and he can be a little bit get into the weeds in a nerdy way, but in the best kind of way.
Yeah.
And what I liked is he used an example that he simplifies things for you. And you're talking to a true expert when they can take something that's really complex and distill it down and put it in layman's terms. A lot of people try to talk way up here, and I feel like the smartest people are the people who can take something that's really would be hard to understand and can explain it to you in simple terms. So I really enjoyed that. And I also enjoyed just his courage to step out in faith and go for things and learn from people that he saw as mentors and take that wisdom and put it into a system. So it was really cool to hear somebody who's been there and really done that.
He had so many great stories about that. The biggest takeaway, practical nugget for me was when he talked about how, because he's a chiropractor,
Yeah.
why is he on a business podcast? But he has built this well-oiled machine that is highly efficient, but they are so intentional about the customer experience.
Yeah.
And they've looked at every detail backwards and forwards and figured out how to be really intentional. And so I think you'll enjoy this conversation. We had a great time, and you're going to learn a lot from Dr. Jason Barker. So enjoy the podcast. All right, we are live. Welcome to the podcast, Dr. Jason Barker.
Hey guys, thanks for having me.
You bet.
Thanks for being here.
So you are a chiropractor.
That I am.
With a specialty. Can you tell us, I guess first, what is a chiropractor, and tell us about your niche within that industry?
Sure. So what a chiropractor does is they evaluate the nervous system for interference, is typically what they would say if you're graduating from school. And then there's branches of it where you're just aligning spines and joints to make sure the nervous system isn't interfered, causing, headaches, dysregulation and muscle tone and stuff like that. So for the gist of it, just a lot of pain and aches and dysfunctions in the body. And sorry, go ahead.
Right off the bat, I'm surprised at an answer, because when I hear nervous system interference, when I think of chiropractor, I think of cracking my back or my neck.
Yeah.
Right. So
Yeah.
Can you unpack that a little bit for us, what that means?
Yeah. So what a lot of chiropractors graduate from school, their philosophy is a clothespin. So it's kind of like a closed link between afferent and efferent nerves. So kind of like a light bulb and battery relationship. You have two wires, one going in, one going out. One controls movement, controls organs, controls the other end, and the other one gives feedback back to the brain. And that's how they work in relationship to each other. And when that gets dysregulated, when a joint's out of place or the muscle tone is too tight or too achy and the joint's not moving correctly, there's dysregulation in that relationship. So our job is to close that clothespin, make sure that light bulb and battery have a good relationship, pretty much.
Wow.
It's a more philosophical version of what we actually do. Because a lot of people are just if something's out, let's just hammer it back in,
Yeah.
See, he's already getting to his unique ability to dumb down this super scientific complex thing to wire, light bulb, clothespin. I'm like, okay, my dumb brain can follow that. I love it.
It's not so much only me. I have to give that to Rachel, my wife, because when you graduate from school and you get textbook heavy and you're trying to impress people with medical terminology, and she straight up was like, I don't care. None of us care. We want to be able to understand it. Your kids want to be able to understand it. Explain it that way.
Yeah, well, I think that's important for people. And also, I've never heard somebody, like I was saying a minute ago, my understanding of what a chiropractor does sounds like it's very different and more science-based than a lot of people realize. And it's just cool to be able to hear how, even if you're simplifying it for us, how that works.
Yeah. It's really doing us a disservice when we say, hey, your back's hurting, let me just crack it or adjust it. There's so much to the complexity of the way we're designed that it's really important to address and educate on what's actually going on whenever you do reset a muscle or adjust a spinal segment.
Absolutely.
Niche. So you're not just what I would call a traditional chiropractor. You do a lot of functional medicine, functional soft tissue stuff. I'm butchering this. Tell us a little bit more about that.
Okay, so I specialize in the nerves specifically because what we found out is there's a lot of soft tissue docs, there's a lot of chiropractors, but their thing that overarches everything is the nervous system. The brain controls the nerves control the muscles, right? And the muscle gives feedback to the brain to tell you the tone of the muscle, how it's moving, and everything. So how I relate that is a lot of times the door may be squeaky, right? And we go in, we spray WD-40 on the hinges and it'll stop squeaking, but is the door latching, right? What dictates the door's latching is alignment, for one, of the door itself and the hinges, and then the door frame. The door frame is the muscle. The muscles makes that frame sit in place correctly so it's flush, right? Over time, the foundation shifts, the frame shifts. Lubricating that door frame or the hinges as many times as you want isn't really going to change the fact that is that door going to latch. So we go from a more quantifiable standpoint because a lot of times in chiropractic, it's very much like, let me adjust you. Hopefully it gets better. Maybe, I don't know, maybe in a few weeks, maybe in a few months. That wasn't good enough for my brain.
Yeah.
I want to know exactly what's going on. I need to quantify it. I need to be able to tell my patient, this is what we're looking at. This is how long it's going to take, because that's how the world operates, right? If you had an investing company and there's like, give me money and maybe in 15 years I'll pay you, chances are they're not going to give you money, right? And that's kind of how we operate, is like, we want to know exactly what's going on, all the parameters, why something's dysfunctional. So we go through a muscle testing system by isolating every muscle fiber in that joint, right? For instance, if you go through a textbook for a shoulder, it's really dumbed down, really. If you look at the shoulder, there's deltoids, there's pecs, lats, and then the rotator cuff, which people think it's one thing, but it's 4 pieces to it. And in that 4, we divide them into 12, because if you take a cadaver and you pull the skin back and you look at the muscle fibers, they're all isolated like feathers, pretty much, and in different directions, even if it's the same muscle. So we're able to isolate each one of those fibers down to its nerve innervation. And that tells us, hey, yeah, your internal rotation is bad, but at what degree?
So at what level the neurons are off? Is that what you're saying? Like where it's not firing correctly? Or
in a sense, yes, because every muscle fiber has a branch of the neuron innervating it. So yes, that's part of the truth. And the other truth is the muscle fiber itself in that muscle body isn't working correctly, right? Okay. So for instance, your subscap, which is a muscle that just brings your arm in and rotates your throwing muscles in baseball and football. If it's not working, there's 4 parts to it. You think internal rotation by your side all the way up to above your head are all internal rotation, but what degree is it not working? When it's not working, then it creates all the crazy side effects, right? Tendonitis, chronic tendonitis, which is tendinosis. It's not shock absorbing, so labral tears or, rotator cuff injuries. Right?
And those are the things people identify and maybe like surface level treatments for them, but they're not getting at the root cause like what you're trying to do.
Exactly. Yeah. Like it's like, hey, let's Google, I have shoulder pain right at the top of my shoulder. Chances are the first thing that pops up is rotator cuff. But it's kind of just like, my car broke down. You Google weird noise, it's like car problems. What is it? Is it the tire? Is it the frame? Is it a piece of plastic on the inside? It's not very specific.
Wow.
Well, we are a business podcast. and you might be wondering like what is a chiropractor, who is so scientifically read, what is he doing on this podcast? And you've already shown one of the reasons I wanted you on here. You were able to educate your customer and teach your customer in such an engaging way about really complex subjects. But as far as chiropractors go, you have built an amazing business in such a short amount of time, and you have raving fans. You have staff that are highly trained, highly engaged, really good at what they do. There's so much about your business that is amazing. And I'm so proud for you. And I'm so proud of you that I just want to learn from that. And I want our listeners to learn from that. So how have you built such a successful practice compared to the, solopreneur who's just a chiropractor just trying to get people in the door? I guess, how did you do that?
I didn't do it pretty much at all, really. It's like we stand on the shoulders of these giants, pretty much. Like, I give thanks to Dr. Carey, Dr. House, Dr. Hodnett, who all had about a decade of, experience, and they've taken it and they refined it, and they've just were willing to take me in and give me the golden egg, right? Like, one thing my mentor always told me, it was just like, you can't learn everything from everybody, but asking for the golden egg. What was one thing that you'll pass on that you can learn really quickly? So I would go to each one of them and ask them, like, what is the golden egg, Mm-hmm. And they've all went down the insurance route, like insurance in healthcare in general is not what we think it is, right? So they went cash practice, which is like the arch enemy of school, right? School tells you, hey, fill out this paperwork, you're gonna get paid by the, companies and stuff. And even through our residency or outpatient clinic, we knew that wasn't true. So I was just like, let's take a leap of faith, listen to what they have to say, trust them blindly. They obviously know what they're doing, right? And then on the side, when I was leaving school, I was like following Albert, Tanner, and Steven. I was just like, y'all are doing something right? Like, what do I need to do? Because it feels like I'm very strong in science and math and intellectual studies for my practice, but that's such a small part of the business. Finances, understanding psychology of money, understanding like investing and everything like that was such a bigger part. So of course, Albert gave me all these books to read. I started just like zooming through these books like a madman, as if like I've totally put school on pause for a while and just started reading all these business books, like building good fundamentals, good principles from like Ray Dalio and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. And that's where it kind of started, right? And then just finding people that are really successful in their field and asking, pretending like I don't know anything, which I don't know anything, and just keep asking people like, in this situation, what would you do? Because at the end of the day, all these products are almost the same. It's a product, it's transactional, right? A product for money. How do we systemize just a different product in healthcare,
So for our listeners, a lot of them don't know how you've got your business set up. So
okay,
could you talk a little bit about, I know you've had these great mentors and you're a very humble guy, and saying like that it's really from these other people, but can you tell us the story about how you learned from these mentors and kind of what it looks like? Sure. As compared to maybe, a lot of people think of the average chiropractic office that they've walked into before. Yeah. What does it look like? How is it different when they walk into your place?
Yeah. And from when you left school,
what do you mean?
Like how you got started with the team that you're with?
Oh, okay. So I was shadowing a bunch of surgeons, and when I was a stud tech and working out with Albert and Steven at Capstone, and I was like, hey, med school is the way to go. Coming from an Asian family, they're like, be a doctor. I was like, okay. So like pressured myself into this career that wasn't really passionate about. I was just like, it's a high income, it's high status, it's, respected, and job security is always going to be a thing. But I was like discontent, I guess. Mm-hmm. I was just like, something doesn't add up. This isn't my personality. Like, I don't fit well into these like really rugged structures, right? Mm. So I hurt my shoulder, think you're 18, you think you're invincible, snatching, hurt my shoulder really bad. And then I went to my ortho surgeon and I was like, what do? He's like, go get an MRI, get an injection, take these pain pills. And I was like, I'm really broke and I can't afford any of these things. So I was just like, so what happens to the average person? How are they going to seek care or answers without, leading themselves astray or damaging themselves further? And then I met Dr. Carey at the gym, and he was like, hey, give chiropractic a try. I was like, my surgeon told me not to. I was like, so you're just going to pop my neck and get my shoulder better? And he's like,
yeah, that's what a lot of people think chiropractors do. Yeah.
And like, I went to my surgeon. He's like, nah, dude, don't do that. And I was just like, well, I'm desperate. I'm coaching. That's my career. I gotta, keep working. So I was just like, whatever. My best friend and my roommate at the time was like, give it a try, dude. He's a miracle worker. I was like, okay. Went through, he isolated all my shoulder into 42 different positions, stimulated a few nerve endings, instantaneous results. My shoulder was stable that day. I was able to pick up stuff again. I was like, this is a really strong placebo effect if it's placebo, right? So I was just like, what do you do? What are you? Are you some kind of like neurologist or something? He's like, in a form, yes. We're actually doctors that study the nerves, and it's a highly specialized branch of chiropractic. I went home, I just trashed my books. I was just like, forget this. I'm not studying anymore. I'm going to chiropractic school.
Really? You already knew just from that? Yeah.
It was like the moment of like, I don't know how to explain it. When you found what you're supposed to do, it didn't matter. I didn't know how much school's going to cost. I didn't know how much all these things. I was just a kid. I was just like, I don't care. I threw it all away. Broke it to my parents. They were mad. They were just like, chiropractors are witch doctors. My uncles were like so mad. And I was like, I don't care what y'all think. This is my life, you know? So I was just like, whatever Dr. Carey says, I'm going to do it. I don't care how much it costs. I don't care how long it takes. This is what I want to do. Then I started doing research and I was like, okay, this is expensive. Then I ran to Albert. I was like, please hire me to be in your lab. I'm not leaving Lubbock. Like, Albert's like, nah. I was like, okay, I guess I'm going back to school. But while I was in school, you know, my eyes were open. Dr. Carey did a very good job of not being like, don't do that. Don't do that. He was like, open your eyes to everything. Open your eyes to all the truth, all the techniques, all the things. And you'll find that our technique is the way to go because everything else is short-lived or a Band-Aid. And I've been doing this for a long time. This is the only thing that works as fast as it says it does, and it's permanent. So I was just like, okay. Usually people are like, no, don't do that. Don't waste your money. You know, he's like, go ahead. If you have the money, learn, keep learning. You'll ultimately go where you need to. And that was really eye-opening because I come from a family that was just like, this is the way. Everything else is a lie.
Yeah.
So I'm learning all these different techniques that are popular, like FDM, ART, which are just soft tissue techniques, adjusting techniques, and functional movement and stuff like that. And I was just like, yeah, it kind of scratches the surface, doesn't really get the job done. And I'm just trucking through school, you know, get married, have kids in school. And I'm like, I don't know anything anymore. I'm just like blacked out, like just trying to survive, you know?
Yeah.
It wasn't until, and then I had all these job offers because I was like really trying to land a job because Rachel was at home with the kids now and we didn't have an income and borderline homeless, which that'll be the next story. But I was just like, I hope he calls. I hope these docs call and offer me a job or else I'm literally going to be homeless. But I had a few offers in Dallas to stay. And like I prayed about it and nothing kind of settled. I was just like, I don't feel at peace with any of these things. I feel like it's a financial security move and not like a calling, which also didn't align. I was just like, hey, this guy's going to pay me this much money to go. And Rachel was just like, pray about it and see what you think. See what God has to say about that. And I was like, okay. I was like, never got peace. And then on one day, Dr. Carey called me. I was in clinic and I was home with the kids because they were sick. And I was just like, he called me, he's like, hey, where are you? And I was like, oh, smokes. He's at the clinic. Surprised me. I'm playing hooky because he thinks I'm going to be not dependent. And I'm like freaking out. And he's just like, no, I'm just calling to tell you there's a job for you back in Lubbock whenever you're done. Come back. And I was just like, okay. I never negotiated a contract or know anything about anything. I was just like, I'm coming back. I don't care about the sweep floors with these guys. These are like men of God, good leaders, take care of their patients. I don't care if I don't get paid. I need to get mentored and be right before I start a career.
Yeah.
Came back. They gave me a contract that was unlike anyone else. Everyone else wanted to put me on a salary and work me to the bones. You know, they were just like, hey, we're going to split like a 60-40 with you and you keep everything above 40% once your bottom line is met, you know, then you just get to build your practice and we'll mentor you along the way. But we're not going to give you a salary because we want you to learn to grow. I was like, easy, no ceiling, no problem. I've never been able to operate, you know, in a place where it's like, this is what you're going to make forever, no matter how much more effort you put in, you know. So I came back and joined Foundation, and then I was offered a partnership about 3 years into it. Partnered up, COVID hit, they almost shut down all our practices. And I was just like praying up, pleading. I was just like, God, please don't do this. Lots of pressure. And then just kept my head down, seeing patients, one patient at a time, and God is faithful as usual.
Yeah.
You know, practice stayed open, build resilience. There's so many uncontrollables in business. There's just like, you think you have all these things down, and it's just like the government could shut you down.
Yeah.
Fire marshals come shut your door. People have to wear masks. You can only have one patient every, you know, and it was just like, you can't control it. Just keep going. And then we got to where we're at. And I was just like, there's a lot of people that want to see us and there's not enough of us. So there's a problem at hand. We need to train more docs because if we don't train docs and get them specialized in this technique will die with us. And it goes back to the drawing board of just like, who's taking care of these patients in the future? Chiropractor will not be a profession in the future if the burnout rate stays at what it is traditionally. Just that open 7 days a week, adjusting 1,000 patients. None of them are really getting better, or some of them are getting better. You know what I mean? This high volume, high stress, high cost model. So that's whenever Dr. Carey developed that like high efficiency model of just like having reset specialists set the points, and we just test, we divide the jobs up, and then like the hours go way down, then you can share overhead because you're hybridizing yourself in the clinic.
Hang on.
Yeah, there's a lot that
I'm
we want to
sorry.
unpack there.
This is how my brain works, so
yeah, no,
maybe a bad candidate for.
Well, you just hit on something that I think we want to unpack in terms of the system going from the traditional model, right, to what you do that's so different. So is that where you're going, Albert?
Yeah, I wanted to summarize what I heard first was like you gave yourself this time and freedom to like explore.
Yeah.
You didn't feel particularly called, and which is super mature of you in that moment, even though it probably didn't feel like it, to pause, to pray about it. Having a wife that encouraged you to do that is incredible. And you gave yourself time for discernment and finding what you were called to do. And then getting started, you made the decision not to go get a job and work for somebody, that there's security there. You touched on that. And yeah, on the other end of that spectrum is to start your own practice and just, put it all on black and go after it and bet on yourself, which some people can do.
Yeah.
But you found something in the middle,
yeah,
which shows discernment and prayer and an open mind, where it was a hybrid of that, of you didn't have a ceiling, but you had a team that you could learn from. And that, like, I really hadn't heard that entire story. And like the discernment at a young age, with you and your wife had twins when you were in chiropractic school.
Yeah, what a story there.
To have the peace of mind or the maturity to take time for that is awesome, and such a testament of like why you are where you are today. And so there's so many questions I have, but the first one, that was one of the things about your practice is you have built something like a business, right? That is really efficient, but doesn't feel like that. You don't feel like a cog in the wheel when you come and see you. And you're seeing multiple patients at one time, but you've been so intentional with how you've set that up, thinking of the customer experience from when you walk into the door to when you're waiting to when you're whatever. Tell me about that. What was the process of creating this customer experience that is highly efficient and still really empathetic, and you don't feel like a number?
Yeah, it all goes back to what Dr. Carey created. Dr. Carey moved back to Lubbock with this technique originally called AMIT, which is now quantum nerve reset, because we practice it a little bit differently. And that's the technique we specialize in. He moved back to Lubbock. His son, Colton, was sick with Duchenne muscular dystrophy. So he wanted to spend a lot of time with his son.
Yeah.
And he was just like, I want a career, but I need to spend as much time with Colton as much as possible. So I need to be very efficient. And he started out just, muscle testing, holding his own points, and then prayed about it. And God told him to hire assistants because his hands were breaking down because it's manual labor. We're using our hands a lot.
Yeah.
And he's just like, how do I do this? And he's like, hire 2 massage therapists. So you go from nothing to having two assistants. And then he booked it every 15 minutes. And he's like, I don't know. That's just what he told me. And I had to do it. And I was just like, okay. He did it. And I came and shadowed, and it was so efficient. And I was just like asking all these questions. I was like, how is it possible that a lot of chiropractors see patients like every 3 minutes? It's like, boom, 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 boom. You don't really get to know or what's bothering you this week. It's like, you just like a cog, right, in a system. And he was like, have you ever stared at someone in the face for more than 5 minutes and talked to them and don't break eye contact? I was like, no. And he's like, do it. So I was like, okay. And I went home. I was like, Rachel, let's stare. And I was like, oh my gosh, you run out to talk about in 5 or 6 minutes. If you're intentionally staring at someone for a long time and talking and listening, it's a long time. And he's like, you can do that, be intentional. Now that you muscle test, you have a reset specialist working on them where you don't break contact with the patient. You're asking them, hey, how are you feeling? Tell me about this week. Tell me about how the pain's changed and stuff. They get your full attention instead of you're looking down a notepad or an iPad while they're just spouting stuff off. You're not really listening. You know? Someone's working on them where they get the full doctor's attention. So the system, I don't really know how to tell y'all. It's just kind of like he was very efficient, very respectful of patient's time and his own time. And it fell into place over just trial and error, but it wasn't really any error. It was just like, he made the system.
Yeah.
And then when I came across, I was like, how's this going to work? He's like, here's the proof of concept. I've been doing this for 5 years now. It works perfect. So I was just like, okay, I'll do the same thing. So let's see if it works again for me. Is it a personality thing? Is it a one-off? Is it an outlier? And I was like, I reproduced it in a year. I was like, can we teach this to people? He's like, I don't have time right now. That's not a place where I want to do that. I need to focus on my family. And I was like, I respect that, but with your blessing, I will do it. I will put in all the legwork. I will create, make this efficient, teach other dogs, teach a technique. Because if not, once again, it's going to die with us, He's like, sure, whatever you want to do. And that's whenever it all began, when quantum started taking off as quantum neuro reset, where quantum health came from, where quantum wellness came from, because people were wanting to learn and we needed a facility to start training.
So tell us about how much have you grown since you went from that conversation to now all of the quantum organizations you just described?
So that first conversation, I was just, an associate pretty much working for Foundation Health and Wellness. And then 3 years later, I partnered with them. And then from there, we started filming videos and teaching modules. And now we have a doctor in Midland, a doctor in Georgetown, Austin, a doctor in Dallas. Yeah. More like Justin, Texas, Fort Worth, I think, more. And then we have one moving to Idaho, one soon to be in Colorado City. And then we have like 10 students in school about to hit the ground running and plant Stephenville, Dallas, and wherever else. That's the dream, is just continue giving people an opportunity to build their own clinic. The world of management is like, there's a lot of, in our world, a lot of eat your young. Come work for me. I'll pay you salary. You're going to work your tail off and you're never going to expand because this is my building. Or take out a crazy business loan and figure it out. Option B or option C. We're a management company. We're going to take care of you. Give us 20% of your collections with no cap for 5 years. What are you going to teach me at year 1 and year 5? Right? So we saw people being wrecked by all of those things. Personal friends of ours just locked into these contracts. And we're just like, is anyone trying to help anybody, or are we just trying to eat our young? So that's where the quantum health consulting came from. I want to help these dogs be free, build a clinic, treat patients well. And there's a cap on our consulting fee. And it's, I can't teach you anything year 10 compared to year 1. You know what I mean? It's like, if you want to be a part of the company where you get referrals and stuff like that, great. But if not, you did it. You built your own clinic. And that's where the quantum health kind of came from. Just, there was people were asking, like, why aren't you teaching? Why don't you help them build clinics? I was just like, oh, gosh, there's a need. So I'm running to Mo, which is one of our business partners. Like, what do I do? He's like, get organized, like get really organized. It's like, that's what I'm weak at. That's where it all kind of came from.
Question. Before we move on, I want to talk about the customer experience one more time of what you described. I just finished a book. It's called Unreasonable Hospitality. It's awesome. You got to read it. But the main principle from that book is to look at everything you do in your business, from invoicing to, interacting with the customer, like every area of your business, and look at it through the eyes of your customer. And how can you be intentional and give them the best experience while also running an efficient, high profit margin business. And that's so important. That's like a lesson that I want people listening to hear, is what you've done is so efficient. I mean, you're seeing you're seeing 2 or 3 patients every 15 minutes, but you've really dissected every step of that process, where when I'm sitting in there and getting treated, like we're talking about vacations and my kids, and we're talking about, I'm training for a half marathon, and you're like giving me advice about that you've been so intentional with that. And that's like an important principle that business owners need to take back to their business, is looking at every little thing you do. how can you give the customer more? How can you be intentional with the customer and, use the collective, use the group, the people that work for you, and ask them, and you can come up with some amazing solutions. And so I wanted to pause there. That is awesome. You've done that so well. Now I have a million questions. Can you describe the consulting, describe it like I'm 5. What is that structure with new doctors that come out of school? How is what you do differently? Describe that.
Sure. So I was kind of like the pioneer. I went through school. Typically, you can't learn the specialization until you graduate. So you graduate. Now you got to fly out 8 times a year, once a month to Utah to learn this technique. And you're horrible. When you first graduate, you don't know what you're doing. You're pulling on arms and textbook.
Need some reps.
Yeah, right? You need a whole residency. You need development of skill. It's an art, right? So I was just okay. So I called Dr. Bueller. I was like, hey, man, I'm unemployed and I will be for a very long time unless we jump on this. And he's like, I don't care. I was just like, can I learn this technique while I'm in school? I'll double down. I'll do my outpatient board studies and I will fly once a month to come learn it. But can I do it while I'm in school so that when I graduate from school, I'm green light and ready to see patients so that I'm not waiting another year? And he's like, I don't know. And finally I was just like, I'm going to fly up there. I'm going to do it. You're just going to have to teach me because there's nothing separating me between me and a doctor who's well established already. I'm hungry. I want to learn this. And he's like, okay, students can come. So we were the first group of students. Me, my friend Anissa, Hunter, and Jeff all went up together 8 months. It was such a blessing to have a community.
Tenacious. That's amazing.
I was just like, I got to learn this. This is going to be the air that I breathe. And he's just like, in that case, then you can come. I want you to know how important this is. I'm not practicing another technique. This is it. So thank goodness we had all of them. We split Airbnbs and, we flew up there. And then I was just like, it really is hard. A lot of people are not going to learn this technique because of travel costs, because of time away from their family, and years of unemployment, So that's where it came from. I was like, hey, I'm going to be able to film a lot of this stuff, put it on video, learning modules, break down the muscles from 3 different angles. You're going to get those videos first. Then when I'm teaching you, it's refinement, not initial learning, right? Yeah. So it cuts that time down. You don't have to be gone for 4 days. Yeah. You come to Lubbock. It's 1 day. We're refining technique, right?
I'm seeing this pattern in a lot of the things you're saying, which is taking all of the wisdom of the people that you know and then putting that into a system and a framework that makes it process driven. And that's so cool because that's something that we talk a lot about here on this podcast and also in our business with the Stag Business Coaching is, so many business owners and their business is person driven, and that's fine to a point, but to scale something, you have to be more process driven and more efficient. And I just love what I'm hearing and learning from you about the way you've done that personally. And it's involved some risk, right? You've had to step out in faith in a lot of things, literally in faith and prayer, but it's cool to hear. And I think maybe be inspiring to some of our listeners of doing that sort of thing. I just wanted to inject that. But as you're talking about this process that you learned in Denver, right?
In Utah,
sorry. And you bring that wisdom back with you. And, I'm sure y'all have incorporated that into your practice now. Does that help you continue to scale up? And is that part of how you educate some of these people who are joining Quantum?
Yeah. That's what we do is we make it a more efficient process and teaching it better. There's material and then there's the art of teaching the material, just like how we communicate something as complex as neurology to a clothespin.
Yeah.
If we can make it more efficient, more digestible, then people suffer less. You know what I mean? I was just so tired of traveling, so tired of maxing out credit cards to learn a technique to help people. But someone has to do it.
Yeah.
So if I could make this less miserable for people and less commuting and everything like that, it's a dead giveaway that people are going to line up for it, right? So that's the teaching part. So that's Jared Carey does the teaching. You can learn that as a student while you're in school. last year once you're done with all your academic stuff. Then when you're done with that, then it comes the consulting contract. That's whenever you can want to build a clinic, right? And you select some cities, and then Mo is in charge of that. Real estate, market research, commuting, all the business side, formation and stuff like that. Mo does that for 6 months before the doors open. Once you do that, then you're splitting time between me and Mo. Once you're done with Jared learning the technique, you're splitting time with me, the business side, and then the practice side, patient efficiency, communication, protocol, management of like how you interact with employees, how you interact with reset specialists, like don't look down when you're talking, and then once we graduate from that kind of process, then it becomes like a refinement. I talk with them once a week, once every 2 weeks. What are some really difficult cases? What are some x-rays, MRIs you need help reading with? Why are you struggling billing? It's just like, I don't know, I have this weird financial tie. I was like, okay, let's be objective. Let's break it apart and then explain stuff, help them get through the process. Or why are you spending an hour and a half with this patient? They're like, well, I love them. I was like, great. But they stopped looking at you at minute 10. They were looking at their phone, now you're doing your both a disservice. Does that make sense? You're running behind, you're taking up their time, and all these things that we consult. And that's how the system's kind of divided, is like in these phases pretty much. Then we get into like small level, like low level accounting. At what point are you supposed to start reinvesting in your company with Mo? Like, he's like, hey, you're making this much income, this is how much you're paying yourself. This is where we need to reinvest in the equipment, or expanding, buying a pulse, buying a decompression. Year 3, hey, we should buy the building. You need to own it now. Now you have something, because as a chiropractor, when you're done, you're done. When these hands break, there's nothing to do. Selling your practice isn't really a thing, and I'm going to get ridiculed for that. But if I sell you my practice, people love me and my personality and the philosophy and the culture I've created. If someone fills in, the practice is going to die down to like 10%. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So basically, you're ripping off the next person.
But I would think with a practice like what you guys are building, it's a lot easier to sell something like that, because you have this process that people can plug into, and this training that they can go through. It's so different than just somebody who hung up a shingle and did it by themselves for 10 or 15 years, right?
Yeah.
So I think that's a really cool thing that you guys have established. If I may, I'm curious about like, what's the thing that's been the biggest win, like that you're proudest of? I mean, you've said so many good things that you guys have been able to accomplish and achieve. What's the biggest win, or the thing that you're maybe most excited about?
I'm really excited to rehabilitate doctors that almost quit. They've been doing it for 10 years and they've never had a vacation, and they're barely making bills. And when they're like, I don't work Fridays anymore, I'm making 20, 30% more than I made before, less effort, my body's not breaking down, I'm working out. To me, that's like the biggest victory, because like if I can do that for a doctor, that I know for a fact that he's serving so many more patients on a higher level. That's a given. That's a result that will happen no matter what. But when you see that spark back in the doctor's eyes, the passion is there, then it's just the beginning. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
That's like the biggest win for me, is like when they call me, like, y'all have changed my life.
Yeah, that's a great feeling. That's the kind of feeling that anyone in consulting wants to achieve with their clients that they're working with.
Yeah.
What is the consulting playbook workflow that you described is, multiple years long. What is that cost structure? What does that cost a established or new doctor? What does that look like?
So what we do is if you're fresh out of school, there's like a $5,000 fee from the beginning to help set up LLCs, JNAP, market research, covering our flights and stuff to go. Because what happens, like when we send these doctors to go look at real estate, they pick things that are pretty. They don't pick things that, no offense, you guys, they don't pick things that are great for business.
Yeah.
Ooh, glass windows. Yeah, that's $7,000 before you know what I mean? We have to go and we're like, these are the 3 that we've selected that are good for your business. The overhead's nice and low, triple net, and build out costs is included, and things that we don't think about. From school, you're like, this guy's going to take care of me. And, no build out costs. We got to fork over $50K to build these drywalls. Mo helps them with that, Then after that, it's 10% of every muscle, pretty much. So we don't take away from consulting or the doctor's consult fees, right? So whatever you charge for consult, you keep all that because they do all the work. we just charge per muscle of all the muscles build pretty much. And then there's a cap at about $3,000. And then it pyramids up as you grow.
Cool.
Okay, that's ingenious and something that the collective of you, Mo, and Jared coming together and being creative around your business, because what y'all do is so different from any other chiropractic practice that I've been exposed to, that for me, the lesson learned for our listeners is if you have built something, right? If you have built a system and processes and built a successful business, maybe opening a franchise isn't the way you need to go, but what would it look like to help the next guy come up and be creative with that cost structure to, be creative on the real estate or what other, there's so many pieces to that are a win-win for Quantum and these newer established docs, that is so creative and fascinating how you guys are really intentional to innovate.
Yeah.
And that's hard.
Yeah, it was piecing the fact that there's such missing components in being a doctor. Their brains are so designed for high level thinking and plugging the brain into a system, right? And I was just like, so what happens whenever you're done? Well, hopefully my 401k takes care of me. I'm like, we don't have 401ks in small business per se. What's your plan? Do you own rental properties? Like, no. Do you own your building? No. I'm like, oh my gosh, back to the drawing board. Like, we got to figure out a way to take care of our client from day zero, which is fresh out of school, till retirement. And that's why we partnered with, Stag, and trying to figure out like, hey, once we get these docs making more money, where do we invest all this money? Like into their own building, into multifamily, into all these other things, also these avenues that they would have never known or understood, or the complexity of learning a rental property or getting a loan or line of credit. You know what I mean? It's like, we saved you for all that. It's part of the consulting fee. We'll invest it for you. And then we partner with companies like y'all,
Yeah. And that's like creating a legacy. I think that's what all entrepreneurs want to get to, that point where it's not just earning a living, but you're building something that can last even beyond you. And the scale of it can be bigger than just yourself. And that's great that you guys are achieving that, and example for a lot of people who are listening.
That I'm inspired by it. My head's spinning. All right. We try to keep these episodes to 30 to 45 minutes long. We're getting close to the end of time. So fire round. What are your top 3 business or self-improvement books that you recommend?
10X by Grant Cardone.
Okay, let's go.
Not his habits, just the work ethic. I love it. Like, something y'all introduced to me, and it's kind of funny. Like, you're just like, this guy's crazy. Psychology of Money. I don't remember the author. Just helps you not get so frustrated with millennials versus boomers and how they place their money and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. And then the ABCs of Real Estate by Robert Kiyosaki, I think.
ABCs of Real. Brandon. That's Brandon. Is that Brandon Turner?
I couldn't tell you.
Oh, ABCs of Real Estate Investing.
It's because like you meet with these guys, and they start talking about equity and all these things, like, and phantom money and appreciation, depreciation. I'm like, dude,
got to understand your terminology, don't you?
Yeah. I'm like, I have no idea what they're talking about. So that book, just like, anybody can read it.
We'll put it in the show notes. Since we can't think of the author, and the other one too.
They're great teachers. Okay. That I didn't know what I would get from you on that one. I love that. Okay. Next question. What is one piece of technology that you've either bought or put into your life that has made an impact that not many people know about?
An iPad.
Okay. Go on.
It's how we run our entire company. All our billings are through like an iPad, all my patient notes, all the fake Excel sheets I pretend to be filling out around there. But that's how it's just
the practicality of it.
Yeah, it's handheld. And that's the coolest thing about our technique is like, you don't need extravagant technology to run an entire successful company. Simplify. A little bit above a journal, below a computer.
Do you guys use any specific tools or platforms in there that you would recommend?
We use JNAP for electronic health records. It's like that. I know there's like, when you talk about PC versus Apple, people are like, oh, if you're a real computer guy, use PC. I'm like, I don't care about programming or anything like that. I don't know any user friendly. So JNAP's very like Apple comparable, very user friendly, very organized. Excel when I have to, because my friends all love Excel. Napkins and pens aren't really sexy anymore, I guess.
Fine. Okay, I'll use an iPad. You can have it at the point of use, portable.
Yeah.
I dig it. How can people get in touch with you? How can people do business with you?
What do you mean?
Like if I wanted to send our listeners to Dr. Barker, how do they get in touch with you?
Just through my clinic or my phone number. I'm pretty personable. I like to meet people in social settings, or, CrossFit jiu-jitsu, or I'm not running, so not running classes. But at my office, if you're a patient, or my personal.
So that's Quantum Chiropractic?
Quantum Wellness.
Quantum Wellness.
Yeah.
All right.
Quantum Wellness in Lubbock, Texas. And we'll put your phone number in the show notes.
Yep.
But man, I appreciate it. I feel like this podcast could go for 3 hours. I have so many questions.
Yes.
But man, thank you so much for being a guest. And thank you so much for what you do in Lubbock.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you,
Thanks,
Jason.
guys.
Thank you for listening to today's episode. I hope you got a lot out of it. I know we did.
Yep, for sure.
And if you liked what you heard, if you want more like that, go ahead and click subscribe to our podcast, and we'll see you on the next one. Also, do you feel stuck in your business? Do you feel like you are a slave to your business? You're forever destined to work in your business and grind away. If you feel like that, visit our website at www.stagcoaching.com and fill out our free business assessment. Our business assessment will help you understand where your business is struggling, and we would love to help you with that. It's free and it's easy and it's available today. Thank you.